that you don't have a background in
Yes.
project management,
Yeah.
so that we can align what you are doing
Yeah.
together with what we are supposed to do practically.
Yeah.
So if you look at this training manual, it has 74 pages, but mostly I don't cover the 74 pages. I normally
Yeah.
touch those key areas
Yes.
that you really need to understand more when you're interacting with the software.
Okay.
But when you're implementing projects, what normally come into your mind?
Mm.
Like, what are projects? According to you
Yeah.
have been
So,
implementing projects, what are projects?
so it is. The project starts
Mm-hmm,
with an idea, and then
mm-hmm,
there is it has a goal.
mm-hmm,
So if we want to just give up, just give an example. If we want to build a hospital,
mm-hmm,
then it starts with that idea. Somebody just thought maybe this area is a bit remote and we require to build a hospital, or
mm-hmm,
even the government if it's part of its mandate.
mm-hmm,
So it starts with that idea.
mm-hmm,
And now we have to think of how will we go about it? Do we
mm-hmm,
draw out the structure?
mm-hmm,
And then how will it be funded? Who
mm-hmm,
will build it?
mm-hmm,
Where? The location?
mm-hmm.
So for me, a project is
Management. And
okay.
we normally say that sometimes the operations keep the
Mm,
lights on. Strategy provides a light at the end of the
mm,
tunnel, but project management is the train engine that normally moves organization forward.
yeah.
What does it mean?
Mhm.
What it simply means is that if, for example, you have, like, you've been implementing projects now and then,
Yeah.
and if you look at what you have been doing, it's like an engine, it's like a train.
Mm, yeah.
So without those projects, you find that maybe the organization may not be able to move forward because projects normally bring money to the organization. At the same time, they normally solve problems. Because
Mhm.
we normally say that if you are going to implement a project, that is from the idea part, that is the inception part, the initiation part of the project.
Mhm.
So that idea that you're going to come up with, either it's going to help you to solve a problem, or it's going to create an opportunity somewhere for you or for an organization.
Mhm.
And the way you have explained is true that you must come up with an idea about what you want to do.
Yeah.
Like if you look at those who are in medical field, you may find like community health officers. They normally implement projects at community level. In case, for example, we have an outbreak of cholera or maybe an outbreak of any other disease, you find
Mhm.
that these people are sent on the ground to help to implement a project that will solve this problem of the outbreak of the disease.
Mm.
So how do they do that? It is through project management. It is through projects that they are able to solve these problems. I'll give you another practical example. Those people who are in refugee camps, they have been doing businesses and
Mm.
they have been implementing small projects here and there to make them survive or to make them continue living in those particular camps. Those are basically some of a few projects that not where people normally take. You may think
Mm.
of digging a borehole or maybe
Yeah.
providing clean water to the
Mm.
community. So if they have the issue of maybe clean water or maybe there is no water at all, you can
Mm.
try to solve a problem by bringing maybe drilling a borehole or looking for money to come and drill a borehole that will provide water to the entire village. So those are some of the examples of project. There are so many because project management is very very wide. So we have a humanitarian project. We have projects under infrastructure, and there are so many other projects that we have.
mm,
But let's go to slide number 2. I am not interested with all the slides, the 15 slides, but I'm interested with a few slides here, that is up to slide number 5 or maybe number 6.
mm,
When we implement the projects, we normally say that they are temporary. They are activities, yes, but they are temporary. They don't run like forever. They don't run to infinity. So there is a start, there is an end. And the way you have said is that there is a goal that you're aiming to achieve, or there are objectives that you're aiming to achieve.
mm,
At the same time, there is what you call the budget. You're going to spend resources, either in terms of monetary resources or material resources.
mm,
At the same time, the item that you are going to deliver, the product, the service or results that you are going to deliver must be unique. What am I saying? Today you are joining project management at Media Africa.
mm,
To you, you are going to spend money to pay for the course. You are going to spend your resources, your data bundles, your Wi-Fi to join these classes. To us, it is a program because it has been there. To you, it is a project. Why? Because maybe after 6 or 7 weeks or 8 weeks, we are going to complete the training. But you see, you had a goal. You have spent your money. It is temporary. You have started like today, we are going to end after certain period of time. So
mm,
that is what qualifies any activity to be called a project. Because any activity can be a project as far as it meets all the requirements or all the characteristics of a project: temporary, goals and objectives, uniqueness, and have what you call defined scope.
mm.
Scope is what is included in the project or what is excluded. That is inclusion and exclusion of the project. What do I
Okay.
mean? Like today, let's say you are working in an ICT field. Then you have been contracted by, let's say, an institution to come and design a learning management system. So if you are contracted to come and implement or develop a learning management system, so there is what you're supposed to do and there is what you're not supposed to do, or maybe what is included in the scope of the project and what is excluded in the scope of the project. For example, once you develop the software, maybe training of those people who are going to use the software or the stakeholders is not part of the scope. But you're supposed to design a software, a learning platform that has everything concerning the student: access to notes, attending classes, interacting with other students, and so forth. But training of trainers, those who are going to use the system, is not part of the scope. So that is why we are saying that it is temporary, unique, progressive, specific, objective, and have what you call defined scope. So you don't go beyond the scope because that is going to bring a lot of problems. It's going to bring what you
Mm,
call a scope creep. And as a result, you are going to spend more money on top of what you had budgeted for that particular activity.
mm,
So that is basically the right definition of a project. There are so many definitions, but that is basically the definition of a project. So we have now the project manager. You've been working as a project manager. Of course, you had
mm,
been planning, executing, managing those projects. managing the team, resources, stakeholders, and also ensuring that you are meeting the goals of the
Mm.
organization. I believe that is what you have been doing.
Sure. They sound familiar.
Yeah,
Mm.
because that is what basically it's only that you didn't know that is what you have been doing in project management.
Yeah.
So project manager has so many roles, but these are just a few of the roles of a project manager. And maybe what we can discuss here is what we call the constraints.
Mhm.
And project management has constraints. For example, scope. If you go outside the scope, then it means that the project is going to have what you call the budget overrun. Then there is time. You've been given time to complete the project. For example, if it is donor funded, the donor cannot fund the project into eternity.
Mm.
So they will just fund your project for a certain period of time, for example, 12 months, maybe 2 years, 3 years, and so. Then, of course, you need money. That is where cost is coming from.
Mm.
You need money to implement the project. You need to manage risk because projects are full of risk. And at the same time, you need to manage resources. So you have scope, you have time, you have cost, you have quality, risk, and resources.
Mm.
Any eventuality that can affect your project, either positively or negatively, is what we are now referring to risk.
Mm.
And now, uh, I am going to show you something we normally call a triple constraint in a project. Something that looks like this.
Mm.
And here, we normally talk about cost.
Mm.
We have what we call time, or rather, what we call the schedule of the project. We have the
Mm.
schedule of the project. Here we have the scope of the project. It's supposed to be here. Scope of the project, like that. Then
Mm.
at the center here we have what you call quality of the project. Quality of the project. So when we are interacting with the system, the software for project, we must consider time, the scope of the project, and also the cost of the activity that you are undertaking. Then when you balance the three, that is time or schedule, cost, and scope, and you have managed your risk properly, then you are going to have or to deliver a quality project. So this triangle that I'm presenting here or I'm drawing here, it's called the triple constraint.
Mm.
The constraint that can prevent you from implementing your project. So if you're not very careful on time, if you're not very careful on how you manage the budget, if you're not very careful on how you manage the project scope, that is the inclusion and exclusion or the boundaries of the project. So what do I mean by the boundaries? The boundaries is that if you go outside what has been planned, what has been
Mm.
planned, so this is what you call the project scope. So we are building a house. If we are building a house, we are supposed to focus on building that house. There is a
Mm.
funny example that I normally give professionals when I'm training them
Yeah.
to make them understand a scope, because if you're not in project management, sometimes scope may sound familiar, but deeply you may not be able to understand properly what scope means in project management. Like today we are cooking rice. It's a very funny example. We are cooking rice. So definitely when we are cooking rice, we have the activities required to cook the rice. We have all the requirement, the resources that we need to cook rice. But after cooking the rice or in the process of cooking rice, you realize, no, I cannot serve rice without what? Maybe without vegetables or without meat or
Mm.
maybe stew. So what does it mean? Our scope here, we have rice. Here, we have rice. We all know that we have money to buy rice. Let's say cooking rice will cost us maybe inclusive of rice, water, and other items, we may spend maybe 100 shillings. But when you go out of your way and decide to cook meat here, at this point you decide to cook meat, what are you going to do? Number one, you are going to change the scope of the project. So if you bring meat, let's say meat is going to cost you 200 shillings, maybe the least. So what does it mean to the cost? You had already budgeted for 100 shillings, but you are about to spend a total of 300. So that simply means that there is the cost overrun. The cost has gone up because the initial budget was 100. You have now changed the scope of the project. You have brought meat, so that means the cost is going to change. Also the time. Maybe cooking rice, you could have taken 5 minutes or maybe 5 to 10 minutes to cook rice. Maybe you are using only maybe one burner or maybe a gas that has maybe one jiko or something like that. Now you have to wait to cook the rice first. That is between 5 to 10 minutes. That is time. Then you are supposed to cook meat. That is another, maybe you boil meat, maybe you fry meat. So it's going maybe to take you another maybe 15 minutes. So in total, you are going to spend 25 or maybe 30 minutes. What does it mean? Initially, you are supposed to spend 5 to 10 minutes. But now, because you have changed the scope, you have gone out of scope. That is now what you call the scope creep. That is the scope creep. We have the scope creep here. So because you have gone out of the scope, and when you go out of the scope, it simply means that if you had just the scope, you pull the scope this way. Number one, you'll have to adjust time the way we have seen here. That is
Yeah.
from 10 to 30 or 15 to 30. The cost is going to increase. So if you're not very careful with how you manage the cost of the project and time, and also the scope, you may end up not completing the project within the scheduled time and also the cost. So that is what we mean by the triple constraints and also what you call the scope and so forth. Now, let's go back to this. So as a project manager, you're supposed to balance the scope. You're also supposed to balance time. You're supposed to look at the cost or the budget, the quality of the project. You're supposed to manage risk. If, for example, you have a supplier who is supposed to supply products or maybe service to your organization, and that supplier fails to turn up or maybe delay in delivering maybe the materials and so forth, what does it mean? It simply means that you are going to the triple constraints will have to be adjusted in terms of schedule, because either you wait a little bit longer for this supplier to deliver the materials, or you look for another supplier. And because that is considered as a risk in project management, maybe delay in delivery of materials. So how do you mitigate such kind of risk? So when you are planning, you need to plan for other sources, or maybe look for another supplier. Or if you are ordering material, maybe to order more than what you need. That way, it will make you not to wait for the materials to be delivered because of what you normally call lead time. That period that you normally wait and so forth. Now, let's go to the other part because project has cycles, or project operates in what you call life cycle and phases. And when we are dealing with the software now, we are going to look at the phases. We are going to break down the project based on what you call the phases. What do I mean? That part of idea generation, where you come up with an idea about the project, you sit down, you do a feasibility study, whether it is economical feasibility study, market feasibility study, schedule feasibility study, operational feasibility study, among other feasibility studies. So that is part number one. That is defining the project and obtaining authorization. You're looking for legal requirements. I want to implement maybe, let's say, building a school, or maybe coming up with a borehole. You need maybe authorization from maybe the local authorities, maybe the national government. You need some papers. You need to bring engineers to inspect what you're doing, among other things. So the idea that you come up with, you normally put it in what you call a concept. You develop what you call a concept paper. And this concept paper is the one that you normally develop into what you call now a project proposal, that you normally now seek funding from the funders. So initiation part is where you give birth to the project idea. And this is where you also assess whether the project is going to be viable. You are checking, do you have what we call technical capacity to implement the project? Do you have finances? Do you have people? Do you have all kind of resources to implement the project? And you also identify even the stakeholders. There is a lot of activities that normally happen during initiation. But basically, that is the first part where you come up with the idea and you assess whether the idea is viable. Cost benefit analysis are done at this particular phase. Selection of the project, because you may have multiple ideas of different kind of project that you want to implement. But the question is, how do you evaluate these ideas? So it is during the initiation part of the project where you give birth to the idea, you evaluate the idea, until you come up with the right with the right project. It's also a part that you normally do something called the business case, assessing the viability of the project economically and also socially. Will the project benefit people? Will it bring money? How will it benefit? How will it change the lives of people around where it is being implemented? That is during initiation. So now you are going to move to stage number two, that is the planning phase. You normally do a lot of things planning because you are going to spend much of your time during planning, because you need to come up with a schedule. You need to think of the resources that you need. You need to think of how you're going to manage risk in this project. You need to think how you are going to develop communication plan, understand who are the stakeholders in the project. You need to bring everything on board. Quality assurance, the QC, the QA/QC, that is quality assurance, quality control team. You need to assemble all the items. During planning phase of the project, we normally say this is where you normally sharpen your axe. Then once you sharpen your axe during planning, you move to what you call the implementation phase or the execution phase. This is where you now carry out the project activities, procurement, hiring people, uh, and also the exact execution of the project. Now putting into action what was in the planning phase. It has a lot of activities, and we may not be able to exhaust the execution phase in one day or in one night.
Yeah.
Then we have the next part, which is monitoring and evaluation, or rather monitoring and control.
Mm.
Uh, I believe maybe you have interacted with M&E officer if you have been implementing project,
Yes. Yes, I have.
because all donor-funded projects requires the aspect of monitoring and evaluation because of accountability and also transparency, and even
Mm.
reporting to the donor.
In fact, I see them now calling them,
Mhm.
is it monitoring, evaluation, learning, something?
Yes, meal, monitoring, evaluation,
Meal, meal,
accountability, and
meal.
learning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
but those are meant to implement humanitarian projects, or those kind of projects implemented by majority of the NGOs.
Yes.
So whether monitoring and evaluation, whether you are doing
Mm.
M&E, I mean meal,
Mm.
like for our case, it is combined. It has meal and it has M&E part of it. So it has been combined to take care of those people who are maybe working in government sectors and those who are
Yeah.
working under humanitarian projects. So during that activity we call monitoring and evaluation, there is so many things that normally happen. Number one, you need to track the progress of the project. You need to recommend for any adjustment that you feel that should be done to make sure the project is on track. At the same time, you need to do data collection. You need to assemble data collection tools. You need to identify the data collection method that you're going to use. You need to sit down, analyze the data that you have collected, whether you have used the online mobile tools, maybe you have used the physical questionnaires to collect the data. Sit down, analyze the data using the softwares for analysis such as SPSS, Stata, Advanced Excel, among others. I'm sure you have interacted with Advanced Excel because of accounting bit of project.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
but it's one field that I may want to advance further. Excel
mhm.
is as wide as
Yeah, very
I thought
wide.
I knew Excel until
Yeah, it's
I
very
met
wide.
somebody else and I found that I don't even know it.
Yeah,
It does
it is very
things
wide.
which appear like witchcraft.
Yeah, it's very, very, very wide, but it is also used by M&E officers to
Sure.
analyze data and so forth. Then
Yeah.
finally, there is the other phase, which is the last phase, that is closure. It is where you close all the activities and you celebrate the maybe the success of the project. You close the contract, you pay the suppliers, you release the team that you have been with during the implementation phase. And this is where now mail comes in, because we are talking about monitoring, evaluation, accountability because of M&E, then learning because of what you are going to come up with during closure. So we normally document lessons learned. For example, if there are some risk that we faced, how we manage the risk. Maybe if we have learned anything, it is documented for future learning, or maybe for future reference. So basically, I have given you a summary of the major phases that we are going to interact with when we are dealing with the program, because any project in this world must fall under the five phases, must
Mhm.
fall under the five phases, regardless of whatever kind of project that you want to come up with. It must fall under the five phases. Initiation phase, some people will call it inception, but it's supposed to be initiation. We have planning phase, we have execution, or rather the implementation phase, we have monitoring and evaluation or control, and we have project closure phase, the last phase. So when we are breaking down the project, or maybe when we are coming up with the scope of the project, because that is the starting point of this particular program, we need to understand each and every activity where it falls in the cycle. Is it under initiation? Is it under planning? Is it under execution? Is it under monitoring? Is it under closure? So we are going to see when we come up with a case study projects to feed in the program, we are going to see whether uh, we'll be able to identify where each and every activity normally falls. So the last part, I'll share this template with you. We have the cycle, it is like that. Number one, initiation. Number two, planning. I have a little bit explained. 03 execution, 04 we have monitoring, 05 we have closure. So that is how it's supposed to follow each other. So when it comes to, for example, this software, so before we start adding anything on this particular software or this particular program, we are supposed to understand the scope of the project. Then once we come up with the scope of a project, or rather what we call the scope statement of the project, we are supposed now to go ahead and do something else called breaking down the project. Because you may not be able to implement the project as a whole, you need to break it down into pieces. And we normally have 5 levels where we talk about the project itself. We have the major tasks. We have the what you call the sub tasks. And lastly, we normally have what you call the work package. So the work package is the least, or it is the smallest part in the hierarchy. And we are going to see how we do that. Now, that is the introduction part of the project management. So at least now we can comfortably move to the training manual, so that we can look at what is in the training manual. I don't know whether you have any question or maybe clarification before I proceed.
We can proceed. So far, so good.
Okay, right. So chapter one is the introduction to the software, and we are going to understand the phases. I mean the phase of the project, the project or the program, and uh, you know this is a program. I don't need to maybe to tell you it is a software, because we all know that this is a software that can help us to manage resources, assign tasks, track the project progress. Maybe what maybe you really need to capture is this part here. That is scheduling or developing what you call the schedule, assigning the resources to tasks, tracking the progress, managing the budget, because we're also going to come up with various budgets for different projects, and also analyzing the workloads, because each and every person will have a workload. If we have a project manager, we are going to assign some work. If we have an M&E officer in the site, we are going to assign some work. We have an accountant in the site or a financial manager, we are going to assign some work. And any other person, we are going to assign what we call the workloads. And it is the same program that is going to do all those activities. Maybe I'll skip some. I'll just
Yeah.
highlight where I feel that needs emphasis. And yeah, maybe here we can look at what is this part here. And as time goes by, I'll be introducing something more about project management, so that at least by the time we are completing this, even if you have not done the project management course, but you have done the software part, at least you understand the techniques and also the methodologies that are used when you're implementing projects. And there are some questions that the system may not answer for you, and you really need to answer some questions so that the system can be able to understand maybe what you're saying. Like the way if you look at the interface, it doesn't have the duration, it doesn't have the task name, doesn't have
Yeah.
the task mode, doesn't have the start, finish, predecessors, doesn't have even the resources. If, for example, I expand this part here, the system doesn't have resources, as you can be able to see the way it is. It doesn't have the
Mm.
resources. So there is something, or rather some question that the system cannot be able to answer. So what tasks need to be performed to create deliverables of the project and in what order? So the
Mm.
system cannot be able to answer that question. What tasks that we need to perform? And the
Oh.
order in which that we are going to follow when we are implementing this activity, the system may not be able to tell you. So it is up to you to tell the system that these are the tasks that I want to perform, and this is the order in which they are supposed to follow each other. If if I want, for example, to I don't know which kind of project that maybe you can give me an example of a project that you're familiar with, and I can take up as a case study for the training.
Okay. Do you mean like one that
Yes,
I've been in?
yes, one that you've been implementing.
Okay. I think one that I have is for building a clinic.
Building a clinic.
Yeah. Because it's
Okay.
not a fully fledged hospital, it's just a clinic.
Mhm.
And it's headed by what they call the clinical officer.
So building a
Just
clinic.
in some remote area
Mhm.
in Isiolo. Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pick up the clinic. We are building
So
the
it's a
clinic.
building project. Yeah.
If we are building a clinic,
Mm.
number one, the system doesn't know that you are building a clinic.
Yeah.
So you have to tell the system that I am building a clinic.
Mm.
And this is the order in which the activity should follow each other.
Mm.
So that is number one. The system cannot answer that question or what you are going to deliver at the end of the day. So it is up to
Mm.
you to tell the system. Question
Yeah.
number two, what are the time constraints and deadlines, if any, for different tasks and for the project as a whole? I'm reading this point here.
Okay.
This relates to the schedule of the project. So the system may not be able to know the time
Mm-hmm.
and different tasks that you're going to undertake, and also the schedule. So what do I
Yeah.
mean? What I mean is that the system doesn't know the duration, the start date, and the finish
Okay.
date. Doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other part is that the system doesn't know the kind of resources that you need to perform each and every task. Let me give you a practical example. Because the system doesn't know what I'm supposed to do, I'll just command the system, or I'll type monitoring and evaluation.
Mm.
Monitoring and evaluation. You see, the system doesn't know that I'm supposed to do. Okay, let me type using an external keyboard.
Mm.
Uh, so the system doesn't know unless I tell the system that I'm conducting monitoring and evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I am the one to tell the system that the resource that I need here, if I'm adding, for example, the resource, I have to tell the system that this monitoring and evaluation is supposed to be done by the project, maybe M&E,
Mm.
M&E, let's say officer. Let's say we have the M&E, officer. So I'm the one to tell the system that this activity we are calling monitoring and evaluation is supposed to be done by a resource called M&E officer. The same system doesn't know how much or how long monitoring and evaluation will take. So I'm the one to define the duration, probably 3 or 4 days. I'm the one to tell the system. So the system now start picking once you tell the system what exactly you want. Okay? Now, what kind of resources, either man, machine, material, are needed to perform each task? So this system, unless you come here and you tell the system that I want either work, material, or cost. So I'm the one to tell the system what exactly I want. Then the other part is that how much will each task cost to accomplish? So what do I mean? If you look at the sheet that I have opened, this one,
Mm.
it has some kind of figures. So
Yeah.
it is triggering this kind of message so that I can tell the system that this activity called monitoring and evaluation, or maybe an M&E officer, I'm going maybe to pay this person, let's say 1,000 Kenya shillings per hour. So I'm the
Mm.
one to define to the system so that the system can be able to understand.
Mm.
Then the other one is what kind of risk do we have associated with a particular schedule for the project? This might affect maybe the scope, time, and constraint. I mean the constraints of the project. So I am the one to tell the system, number one, we need the time as a constraint. So if I go back to the system, the constraint number one is what you call the duration of time.
Mm.
Then I am the one to to describe to the system the scope, because this is where the scope is supposed to appear of the project. At the same time, I'm the one to tell the system that this is the budget by adding the budget on this particular sheet. That is the
Mm.
material, the type of resource that I need, the overtime if there is, and also the standard rate. So I'm the one to tell the system like that. Now, those are some of the questions that the system may not be able to answer for you. I'll not dwell so much on plan and scheduling because we are going to interact with it. I want to move to this part here. That is,
Mm.
uh, of course, project manager should be able to answer other related questions as well. Now, this is related now to project management methodologies and techniques. So, as
Mm.
a project manager, there is something that you need to answer: why the project needs to be run by the organization, which kind of
Mm.
project are you implementing, and why will it be implemented by the organization. Maybe the organization is implementing this project because of their technical capacity. They have enough manpower, they have enough capital to execute the project. The other thing that is related to this normally fall under a certain area in the project you normally call the communication. What do we call it? We can call it just communication in project management, because there is a way that communication is supposed to be handled in project management, and even the methods of communication and how you communicate with your team in the
Mm.
project. And that is why we are saying that it is your duty as a project manager to understand the best way to communicate the project details to your stakeholders, because we have so many stakeholders in the project. We have the donor, we have the project manager, we have the beneficiaries of that particular clinic, and other people or other beneficiaries, even the public, even the press. Those are part of the stakeholders. The other part, that is number three, as a project manager, you need to understand risk management plan. How do you plan for risk? But this one is now the advanced part of the project management, because risk can take like when you're training risk in project management, it can take even 8 hours or even 10 hours to train risk management and even how to develop that kind of plan. But as a project manager, you really need to figure out what are the risks, how you plan for the risk, how you mitigate the risk in case, how you avoid the risk, and various strategies that can help you maybe to manage risk. So that is another technique or another area of methodology that as time goes by, we are going to look at it. The other part is about the vendors. How are you going to manage the vendors, the suppliers? Because projects do have suppliers anyway. How are you going to manage them? How do you communicate with them? How do you pay them? How do you document maybe the payment documents? And how do you relate with them, etc. It's another interesting area that we also need to look at. Maybe when you're undertaking your course, that is accounting, you must have maybe done something to do with supply. And supply is the same as what we are discussing here, the vendors, how you manage the vendors, because that is the procurement bit of project management. Then the other question that you really need to answer is how you're going to track and monitor the project, because I believe that is another area that the donors are always concerned with. How you monitor the project, how will you make sure that the project is successful, and even after maybe the donor has withdrawn the funding, how will the project continue running? Sustainability, because tracking and monitoring the project is purely meant to ensure that the project continues after the donor withdraws the funding, or maybe after completion of maybe the fund that you got from the donor, because the donor will give you funds for a certain duration of time. So how are you going to track the project? How are you going to monitor that project? What about quality? How will you know that you have delivered quality product or quality project? How the quality is measured and qualified? How can we say that this project has met the standards, it has met quality? So those are some of the answers that, as a project manager, because you'll be dealing with the project, you need to ask yourself. So the MS project will help you now to see the plan in what you call various formats. So once we start keying in the system, we'll now be able to see a plan, a complete project plan on how we can implement a project. The other part is that we are going to see the time, the schedule of the tasks, and resources, and how you can effectively manage them. Because if I have an activity called monitoring and evaluation, and I have brought the project manager uh, to come, or rather the M&E officer to come and monitor the progress of the project, then I can be able to say, or maybe I can be able now to say that we are following the schedule consistently, and maybe the resources are maybe efficiently used, and maybe the goals are effectively, maybe they have been achieved. So the other part that the system will help you is to track information about work, the duration of the project, and also the resources that are required for the project. So that is another part that the system will help you to understand. Also, In project management, we normally produce documents, we normally produce reports, regardless of whether they are status reports, whether they are progress report, whether they are completion reports. So the system is going to help us, even the cost, even the source overview report. We are going to generate those kind of reports using the system. What am I saying? If because we are going to navigate the system, there is the tab for report. So you see the kind of report that we are going to generate from that part.
Okay.
Now, from chapter 2, that is where we now start interacting with the system. And this is where you know how to open a file, how to save a file, where to start before you start even writing something on the screen here. So before we
Mm.
start putting anything here on the screen, there is something that we are supposed to do, and that is where the starting point of the system normally begins. The Gantt chart, the timeline, I'm going to show you what happens. So I don't need to explain this because that is what we are going to do practically.
Yeah.
That is
Mm.
getting started chapter number 2. We have already installed the system.
Mm.
Uh, for our case, we have installed under Windows 10, and I believe this is what you have seen on the screen once you install the program.
Yeah.
This is what,
Looks like that.
yeah, we open this
Mm.
is a new or a blank project.
Mm.
Then I'll introduce or I'll take you through this.
Mm.
We have various commands on the screen. Then we move to chapter number 3. So basically, this document has around 9 chapters that we are supposed to cover.
Mm.
So the last part is generating report. So when you see that we are in this particular tab here, know that
Mm.
we are winding up the program,
Okay.
because this is where we are supposed to end reporting, generating reports.
Mm.
So chapter number 3 now involves setting a plan for the project, setting a new plan for the project. We
Mm.
are going to create a plan. We are going to launch a plan for the project. And these are the kind of images that we are going to see. And we have already seen this. When you open the project, the blank project, you'll be able to see this. And it is the same as what I'm presenting. And apart from that, we have now setting up, we look at the calendars that we use, because in a project you'll be dealing with the people. You'll be setting up plans to be implemented or to be used by people to help to guide other people during implementation.
Mm.
You may find that some projects will work, will have to, or some people or some project team will have to work on night shift. I don't know whether there is a point where they work for 24 hours. I've never seen that, but
Mm.
it is part of the calendar. So the calendar is going to help us to, for example, if you are not available, let's say the finance manager is not available on a particular date. So how can you adjust that in the system to know that this person will not be available on maybe on 26th, maybe on 27th, maybe on Monday, Tuesday, because you may not be available throughout. Sometimes people may not be available all through. So the system has given us that leeway to know how to accommodate such kind of schedule. So it's going to give us something like this. So depending on the chapter that we are in, let's say for example we have done setting up the calendar. So you'll be able to see this kind of image, but this is now the practical bit of what we are supposed to do. Then after that, we are going to add what you call exemptions in the calendar. You find that on 1st May, we normally have a holiday. On 1st June, we have holiday. 10th October, 20th October, Christmas Day. Sometimes we have the Islamic holidays.
Mm.
And the system agrees or knows that we are supposed not to work on holidays. So if you have such kind of exemptions, then the system allows for adjustments. So we are going to look at that particular part for the adjustments. Then we are going to set what we call the resource calendar. What do I mean by resource calendar? The resource calendar, because we are dealing with various resources. We are dealing with the material, we are dealing with human beings. So we are going to set calendar for the human beings. If you are not available on a particular date, if you're not available on a particular date, then we can be able to come up with your calendar. A calendar that will say on 27th, Mr. John will not be available on this particular date. So the system will be able now to configure to ensure that everything is running, whether you are there or you are not there. So that is about setting up the calendar. So we'll add various exemptions depending on the availability of the team. And so this is the kind of interface that we are going to see when we are setting up now the calendar. Then there is what we call non-working days. Like now, majority of project team do not work on Sundays, do not maybe work on Saturdays. So you find that they are working for 5 good days in a week. So the system is able to accommodate that you do not work on Saturday and you do not work on Sunday. At times, you may work throughout the week, or maybe you may work for 6 days in a week. That is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Maybe you don't work on Friday, you work on Sunday. So you can be able to adjust and tell the system, I'll be working from Monday, except that is from Monday to Sunday, except on Tuesday, Wednesday, or maybe Thursday. That is creating what you call non-working days for the team. Apart from that, we don't need to talk about launching the project because we already have the system. But there is a very important part that you are going to cover, what you can be able to see on the screen. That is what you call the back view settings. The back view settings, this is what you call the back view settings, this one. So we'll discuss what you're supposed to do before we start planning for our project here. There are some settings that you're supposed to make sure that they are in order to give us the best. So we'll be able to see such kind of interface. Then chapter number 4, and I believe this normally comes actually earlier before even we reach chapter number 4, is creating the tasks, or rather building the task list. This one. Sorry, the entry mode, that is this one here. Let me delete this. So we are going to build what we call the task list here. Before we even move to this part, we build our task list on that particular point. Chapter number 4, we only talk about tasks. And if you remember, there is somewhere I talked about work breakdown structure. So we come up with a scope of the project. Then from the scope, we are going to generate, or we are going to come up with what you call the WBS, the work breakdown structure. So this system, we can only put down what we have already broken down. So that is the only thing that can help us to understand the system. Creating tasks. So that is now entering the tasks, entering the durations. So when we are entering the duration, this part here, when we are entering the duration here, there is something that you're supposed to factor out. Are we given duration in minutes? Are we given duration in days? Are we given duration in weeks? Are we given duration in months? So it will depend whether it is days, weeks, or months. But mostly, by default, we normally use days. By default, we use days. So this is what you are going to see. The other part is uh, okay. I'll talk about ERAP's duration later. If depending on the kind of project that we are going to handle, I talk about ERAP's duration because mostly we find ERAP's duration in infrastructural project. This one, not all projects normally have what you call ERAP's duration, but it is there in infrastructural projects. So from chapter number 4, we are going to talk about milestones. Milestones are very, very important in project because sometimes the donor or maybe the major stakeholders or the key stakeholders will only give you a go ahead to the next phase if you have achieved a milestone. And we normally say that a milestone normally mark what you call a specific point in the project timeline. Let me explain. You have your team and you are doing what you call budgeting for the project. So once you come up with a comprehensive project budget, we can say, and you have completed that budget, we can say that is milestone one. If you have sat down and come up with a project management plan and you have completed the plan and it can be used by the team, that is another milestone. If you have developed the schedule of the project and it is complete and it can help to implement the project, we can say that that is another milestone that you have achieved. So we'll see how the system normally marks the milestone. So once we start adding information on this particular sheet, we'll be able to see how the milestone will technically appear on this right hand side. Then we see how we can manually insert the milestone. Let's say you have completed what concept development, or maybe you have completed the proposal development. How can you tell in the system that that is a milestone? We'll do that. Then converting a task into a milestone. Let's say we were doing proposal development. Proposal development is a task. So we can simply change it into a milestone. I'll show you how we normally do that because sometimes the donor may ask you the milestones so far. And you can simply go to the system and check what you have achieved. So it will appear something like this. Then we have the project summary tasks visible. You'll be able to see how to see the project summary. The project summary is very, very important because we are going to develop a plan, and a plan can run all the way to hundreds and hundreds of pages. And maybe the project manager or the person in charge or the senior most person in the organization want you to give them a snapshot of maybe the total budget. And that is where now the project summary comes in because it will give a snapshot. So instead of sitting down and calculating how much you are going to spend in the project, you have a summary of it. So the project summary is very, very important also.
Okay.
Then, so this is a procedure that you are now going to follow for us to achieve that. Those are the steps. There is something we call dependencies. Dependencies, that is page 21.
Dependencies.
The dependencies in a project. So like you find that this activity will depend on this activity. So if I'm doing feasibility study, I'll have to complete feasibility study before I move to the planning phase. So what does it mean? You must finish feasibility study before you start planning for the project. Or you must conduct what you call the cost benefit analysis of the project before you start implementing the project. Or you find that, uh, let's say, writing a proposal and budgeting are being completed at the same time. So that is now finish to finish, FF. all activities are completing at the same time. Proposal development and budgeting, because budgeting is part of the proposal. Any other activity that you do that is completed at the same time, we can categorize them under task dependency number 2, finish to finish. We have task dependency number 3, start to start. So you find that activities are starting almost at the same time. So like now here I've given an example. You are conducting a survey, at the same time you are filling the responses, or maybe you're tabulating the responses. You are collecting data at the same time you are you are recording the responses. Then lastly, we have the start to finish. It's actually rarely used, but it is there. Like you cannot start an exam before the preparation itself is completed. Look at the Kenya National Examination Council. Before the exams are done, they must set those exams. There must be validation of those exams. They must do packaging. There is printing before you. So it must end before you start doing examination. So those are what you call the task dependencies. One depending on another. The other one depending on another one. Before we move down, there is a document, or there is a guide we call Project Management Body of Knowledge, PMBOK. I don't know whether I have it somewhere in my archive, but I'll check. This is a guide that is going to help you to understand more, to understand the project management better. So I check
Okay.
if I have it, I'm going to share with you.
Okay, I appreciate.
Okay, so we are going to talk about the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart will simply appear on this far end here. So this part is for the Gantt chart. They are the bars. So they normally take, if the activity is going to take, for example, 5 days, visually we are going to see the bar appearing here, and it will represent the number of days that that particular task will take place. So instead of maybe looking at the duration, you can be able to check the bar and know that the task is going to last for maybe 5 days, 6 days or so.
Okay.
So they are here. They will appear like this. When we start adding them, we are going to see them.
Okay.
Uh, there is something we call respecting links. We are going to talk about respecting links later. It's also another area that is very, very important when we have discrepancies in the schedule. So you find there is conflicting activities. So respecting links will come in now to solve such kind of conflicting, where you find that the project manager is supposed to be in the site in the morning. At the same time, the project manager is supposed to maybe to be handling something else in the office. So you see there is what you call conflicting tasks, because you're supposed to do one at a time. And that is where respecting links now help us. That is manual to automatic. So if you remember the questions that I was telling you that the system cannot answer for you,
Yeah.
those questions, when we are responding to the question, for example, what are the tasks? We normally add them manually. Look at what we are doing. So if I type, for example, if I type A on the task name, let's
The
say
task.
A, yes, task name. I want you to type A. We have B, and probably we have C. So we are doing it manually. If I add duration here, for example, I add 4 days. Here I add 3 days. Here I add 5 days. I'm simply doing it manually. Now, if I come here and say that the project is going to start today, that is date 21, I have already added manually. Why? Because I have defined that task A, which is 4 days, is going to start on Wednesday 21st.
Mm.
The system understands that you're not supposed to work on Saturday and Sunday.
Mhm.
So, because when you add 4 days plus 21, it's actually supposed to give us 25. But
Mm.
the system is telling us that this activity will be completed on 26th.
Mm.
Because in that particular week, we have only, we have now Wednesday, we have Thursday and Friday, plus Monday, plus Wednesday itself. So when you add plus Sundays, and then that task is supposed to be completed on Monday. By default, the
Mm.
system understands that you're not supposed to work on Monday or Tuesday, but it is flexible to accommodate those people who normally work from Monday to Sunday or from Monday to
Mhm.
Saturday. So that is what we are calling
You,
now the
so you
manual.
have to manually, sorry, Francis, sorry.
It's okay,
So
it's
you
okay.
have to manually do what? Set it that way.
Yes.
That my working days for this project are Monday to Friday.
Mhm.
You'll have to do that initially
Yes, you
so
have
that
to
when you
go.
actually,
Yes, we are supposed to
mhm.
start somewhere.
Okay.
So before you start developing the plan, you must understand, are we working from Monday to Sunday? Are we working
Yeah.
from Monday to Friday? You need to tell
Okay.
the system.
Yeah.
So this is adding the data manually.
Yeah.
Now, if I want the system to do the rest of the work for me, and that is where
Mm.
now the auto scheduling, because we have manual and we have
Yeah.
auto scheduling or
Mm.
automatic scheduling.
Yeah.
If I want the system to do the rest for me, I'll
Mm-hmm.
simply hit the task mode here. I'll select the task mode and I'll go back to task. Then I'm
Yeah.
going to change it into what you call auto scheduling.
Yeah.
By hitting the auto scheduling, you can be able to see the system has filled everything here. And the bars are
Oh.
now appearing here.
Mm.
So that is what we are simply calling the auto scheduling here, the automatic
Scheduling.
scheduling. So the
Yeah.
system calculates the value, the task duration, start dates, and so forth. So the other part, uh, that is now converting the task into auto schedule, the way I've converted, but don't worry about that. We are going to do
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
So the other part is that is the steps that you're supposed to follow. Chapter
Mm.
number 5.
Mm.
Projects do not work without resources. They need resources.
Yeah.
And in project management, we normally categorize, especially when we are using the programs. We are given only 3 options, but we have so many kind of resources. But
Mm.
the system normally give us only 3 kind of resources, or categories rather. That is work resources, cost resources, and material resources.
Mm.
Because basically that is what you're going to deal with in projects. That is work, people, equipment, machines, they fall under work resources category.
Yeah.
Any financial, any finance that you use in the course of implementing the project, such as traveling expenses, food expenses, etc., they normally fall under cost resources. We have material resources, anything tangible or physical will fall
Mm-hmm.
under that category. So that is what you need to understand in chapter
Setting up.
number 5.
So,
Because
but even the worker,
mhm,
people and equipment will
mhm,
have a cost.
yes,
Okay.
yes, they will have a cost because when, for
Because
example, we come
it
to the
will
resource
cost.
sheet here.
Mm-hmm.
So from this resource sheet, we can be able to see the 3 categories: work,
Yeah.
material, and cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can be able to see them. So we are going to key in all that information here, indicate how
Mm.
much it's going to cost us. If we are
Yeah.
dealing with work, we are going to indicate the number of people or professionals. If we are
Mm.
talking about materials, we need to list all the materials that we need and even the cost of those materials.
Yeah.
If there is any cost related to maybe traveling, maybe food, drinks, and so forth, maybe consultancy or professional, maybe fees will
Mm.
fall under that. Maybe legal requirements, certificates,
Mhm.
licenses will fall under that category.
Okay.
So,
And these Francis will vary
mm,
by maybe day duration. For example, maybe between 22nd May
mm, mhm,
and 25th May, we might need more people than
mhm.
we will need on 26th May. So
No,
we'll be able to plot all that.
what the system
That
normally
makes
do,
mm, mm,
the system need you're supposed to come up with the entire team.
yeah,
You come up
the
with the
entire
entire
team.
team, yes.
Okay.
Now, when we are now assigning the resources, if you feel that on that particular date, let me go
Okay.
maybe to the entry mode. Maybe on this particular date, if we need
Mm.
more resources, then we are going to select our resources from this point.
Ah, wonderful. Okay.
So once we
Make-
start adding the resources, all of them will appear here.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that is all about the resources. There
All
is
right.
nothing more about the resources. We are going to see
Mm.
there is something we call resource maximum capacity.
Mm.
The resource maximum capacity is also very, very important because it clearly says that your the person that, or maybe the professional or the technical team, maybe they are taking 8 hours in a day, 5 days in a
Yeah.
week. So we normally assign 100% to say that
Mm.
this person is working for us, not part time, is a full time
Mm.
employee.
Full time. Yeah.
So we are going to have 100. By default, we are supposed to have 100.
Yeah.
But but if maybe we have consultant from maybe in an organization, let's say we
Mm.
have contracted maybe a company, and the
Yeah.
company has decided to bring maybe 4 to 5 people. You're supposed to multiply 100% by the number of people from that particular company or for those
Yeah.
handling that particular activity, and you're supposed to factor out the cost based on each and every person in that particular activity.
Yeah.
So you not pay them as a team. We normally look at the individual part. So if
Mm.
this person is working for 8 hours or full time, that is 100%, and we have five, they are working for 500%.
Uh-huh.
We'll see that.
Okay.
Now, the other part is enter resource cost. That is the sheet that I'm presenting. We are going to open this sheet later and try to feed in some information there. Uh, Adding notes, don't worry about adding notes. I'll show you how we add some notes because sometimes you may maybe fail to complete a task and you leave it
Mm.
maybe halfway. So you may leave a note to the person who is managing the system. You leave a note, maybe you can tell that person this work is still in progress. So
Mm.
you can just leave a note there. So that is what we mean by a note. Where is it? A note, adding a note to the
To resources.
resources. Yeah.
Okay.
Setting up the cost resources, something that we are supposed to do. Each and every cost that we are going to incur, we are supposed to assign that cost. If it is for material cost, if it is for human resource, we need
Mm.
to assign. We need to be specific exactly where that money has been spent. That is setting up the cost.
Okay.
The other part is assigning resources to the task. That is what I did here when I said that
Mhm.
we have monitoring and evaluation officer. I mean monitoring and evaluation activity done by an M&E. So that is now
Yeah.
assigning a resource to the an activity or a task to the resource.
Mm.
Okay, so that is chapter number 5. Is it 4? Number 5.
That's five, I think.
I also think it is chapter number 5. Yes, that was chapter number
Mm.
5. You can see it has a lot. That is
Yeah.
resources. We have chapter number 6, time and cost. We need to estimate the cost of each and every activity. There is, in fact, we normally call it time and cost in project. It falls under
Mm.
a certain area we call time and cost. And
Okay.
you need to plan for the duration and cost and also time. How much will each activity cost, the duration, etc. So
Mm.
we look at various techniques for estimating cost, such as we have analogous, we have parametric, we have top-down, we have 3 point. We look at those when it comes to cost estimation in projects.
Okay.
How do we check the plan's duration? We'll see, because that is
Mm.
something that is obvious.
Mm.
Mhm. The other part that is very important is about the project statistics. We need to know
Mm.
how much the project will cost. We need an overview of how much time we have spent in the project, the remaining, the amount of money that we have spent. That is all about the project statistic. Because sometimes, maybe if you are working under somebody who is maybe very senior, maybe may request you, can you give us the data on maybe
Mm.
the remaining days, or maybe the amount of money that we have spent, what is remaining, duration, etc. So the project statistics, very, very key.
Okay.
Chapter number 7, this is where we normally take a lot of time, tracking the progress of the project, because remember, it is
Mm.
during implementation where we track the progress of the project. So there is a lot of time that we normally take here, understanding the baseline, the starting point, the point of comparing where we are against what we budgeted. That is about the
Mm.
baseline, so that at least it can be able to give us maybe the variance, to see the variance. Is there a variance? Are we within the cost, within the budget? Are we within the time frame? So that, remember, we say that the project is has what we call the start date and also the finish date.
Mm.
Baselines, very, very important. We have about 11 baseline. So you can decide to have a baseline for each and every task, or you
Mm.
can decide to have a baseline for the entire project. Me, I normally find it better to have a
Mm.
baseline for the entire project instead of assigning a baseline to a specific task.
Mm.
So you look at it. Um, so you look at the resource, the Gantt chart, the baseline, the Gantt chart, the overview of all the resources that we have spent. You'll be able to look at it.
Mm.
Updating the baseline, that is something that you are going to do the entire project. If you are selecting specific tasks, the baseline are very, very important. Why? Because they tell you whether there is any deviation, whether there is, you have spent more money than what you are supposed to. Baseline,
Mm.
so important. So we see how we can set multiple baseline. But for my case, I normally set the baseline for the entire project. This way, and this one will guide
Mm.
me all through.
Mm.
So I normally use one baseline out of 10, out of 11
Oh,
anyway,
okay. 11.
out of 11, because we have about 11 baselines
Oh.
in project.
Mm.
Interim plans, we can have interim plans, or maybe we can wait for an activity to be completed. But they are also very, very important, so that you can communicate the status of the project
Mm.
and also the progress of the project. That is tracking. It's part of what you're supposed to do there. We can track plan as maybe percentage. You can say that sometimes you normally hear even government or politicians saying that or contractors mentioning that our project is at 80% complete or
Mm.
50% complete. So this one is the one that is going to help us understand the status of the
Mm.
project, whether it is 50, 20, 25, complete, etc. That is tracking the plan, that is obvious. Actual start date and finish date for the project. Sometimes you may be asked to maybe to tell people or to tell the stakeholders um, when you expect to complete the project, or
Mm.
maybe when you started, or what when you expect to start a project, and maybe when you expect to complete a project.
Yeah.
The advanced part is about what I was discussing. That is the dependencies. They are the same, but we are going to look at them in a different angle, unlike the initial part.
Okay.
So you look at the lead time and lag time in a project. These are very, very important because sometimes the person who is supposed maybe to start an activity, you find that that person is very busy. And when the person is busy, you have to delay an activity to wait for that person maybe to complete what he or she is doing. So, and this is where now the lead time and lag time normally apply. So the project can start with 3 days before, or a project can
Mm.
be delayed for maybe 3 days before you complete the task. So you see the advantages of maybe delaying the project, or starting the project, or starting a task or an activity maybe some few
Mm.
days before, or delaying for some few days before or after. It has its own also advantages
Disadvantages.
and disadvantages.
Okay.
We talked about the constraints, but at this point, we are talking about the task constraints.
Mm.
So we look at various constraints. There are 8 task or constraints. For example, there is a constraint that is flexible. So as late as possible. Task schedule as late as possible with the ending before the project ends. I mean without even delaying the subsequent task. What do I mean? RUP means
Mm.
what? As late as possible. You complete the project, the task as late as possible. If you are supposed to complete this is where now the 3 point, there is a technique we normally call the 3 point comes in, where
Mm.
you have optimistic, you have pessimistic, and you have now the most likely time. So
Mhm.
that is when you say that you complete the activity as late as possible, what does it mean? You have failed to complete the activity at the exact date or duration that you are given. So there is room where you can maybe not complete the project on a specific given time. So as soon as possible, still flexible to you as a project manager, because you have no fixed date when to complete, even when to finish the task.
Mm.
Uh, Semi-flexible, start not earlier than, that is a bit rigid, because start not earlier than or no earlier than. So you cannot start a project before
Mm.
that particular time. Finish not earlier than, same. Start not earlier than. So finish not later than. So there is some kind of rigidity here. So you are given a specific time frame. Like government project, you are given what you call specific time frame. There is another
Mhm.
one, inflexible. We normally categorize them into 3 major categories. Inflexible, specific date. If you are saying it is tomorrow, you cannot go beyond tomorrow. If you are
Mm.
saying that you start that project today, you cannot start it tomorrow. So it is inflexible. And we have such kind of schedule when we're implementing this project. The deadline is based on what we are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the fixed cost, like the cost of rent. We are going to see how we normally take care of this. Maybe cost of water, water bills, and so forth. There is what you call recurring tasks. Some tasks normally recur in a project, like if you normally have frequent meetings, let's say on Monday, on Friday, maybe 4 times in a month, you may find that there is such kind of recurring tasks. So you put meetings as recurring. When they recur, you put in the schedule. So it is the system is going to take care of all the recurring tasks. Then we have now the critical path. This is all about now viewing. We have already done the plan. So the remaining
Mm-hmm.
part is to view, for example, the critical path. So the critical path doesn't mean the most important path in the project. It normally means that that is the path that will take the longest duration to complete. And at the same time, it is those are the activities that can prevent you from completing the project.
Mm-hmm.
And in project management, we normally say that you must be very careful with the critical tasks, those tasks that are taking the longest duration, because they can delay your project from being completed on time. Then
Mm-hmm.
you look at various critical path vocabulary such as free float. We have the total float. Mm. So for the free float is the amount of time a task can be delayed without delaying another one. So you find that you can delay a certain task whereas the project is being or the project is ongoing. Then there is now the total float. The other one are just basic, fully allocated. You find that a person is working for 40 hours. This one is also important. Over allocated, fully allocated, under allocated. So in a week, if I'm supposed to work for 40 hours, if you give me 45 hours, I am over allocated because the actual number of hours that I'm supposed to work are 45. I mean 40. And you have given me more than the required or the recommended time. So we see how we solve such kind of problems because they do normally appear in the project. So I think the other part is about resolving issues. In case we have a problem, how do we solve it? This is where I was talking about respecting links. They help us to solve some kind of issues. If maybe you have given me 65 hours, how are you supposed to relieve those hours? We see how we do that, how we develop the project to make sure everything is in order. Lastly but not least is what we call reporting part. Where is the reporting bit of the project? That is where these are just strategies of making sure that you don't overload the resource. Maybe the M&E officer, you don't overload that person, the project manager, or whichever resource that you have. Leveling is another strategy that is we are going to talk about for helping you also to solve such kind of problems. The other part is about chapter 9. You remember I told you it has 9 chapters. This is where we report any kind of reporting that we have here, all these kind of reports. We're supposed to cover them at chapter 9. Cost, the baseline cost overview. There are so many. If we look at the cost, like here we have one, two, three, four, five. Here we have one, two. On the dashboard we have one, two, three, four, five. New report, you can start from scratch. Progress, we have 1, 2, 3. So there are so many kind of report that we are going to generate in chapter number 9. And that brings us to the end of the theory class for Microsoft project. There is a lot. There is a lot, as you can be able to see. But we are going to learn because we have enough time to learn.